The next presentation is on DevOps, and more specifically, end-to-end OpenTelemetry observability across apps, Kubernetes, and database. We are very excited to welcome Paul Parkinson, developer advocate at Oracle. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was an awesome talk, Lisa. Mine won't be as good, to be honest. Mine's a bit more topical. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Just a second. Okay. So it's funny because I could echo a lot of what Lisa was saying in that presentation. That was really well done. I've been a developer advocate at Oracle for a while now, and we use a lot of those same strategies as far as exactly what she said, as far as there's a million hello world examples, but if you give someone a sandbox environment and workshops to take it to the next level, it just makes such a difference. But all of that presentation I really enjoyed. So mine is a bit more topical as far as DevOps. DevOps meets DataOps. But this is something I wanted to present on because I've been working in this area for quite a while, and it's kind of a cross-cutting concern. So no matter what you're working on, and especially if you're working on these AI apps, not only the AI apps and different architectures like microservices and things like that start to necessitate this ability to have good observability into your applications, but also there are AI tools to help with the observability and CI/CD and DevOps and things like that. So I'm going to go into, I am coming from Oracle, so I'm going to be talking about Oracle products, but it's the overall topic of observability and things to consider. And like I say, whenever I give presentations on a number of different topics, but DevOps, CI/CD, and especially observability always fills the room, whether it's because it's something people like or it's something people have to deal with whatever application they're building. And like I say, especially things like microservices where there are these components, disparate that need tracing, etc. So let me get into it. I do have a lot of slides. I'll go fairly fast through them, but it's more about getting the overall concepts. So this is the agenda, and I'll go through them one by one, starting with cloud native OpenTelemetry and open source. Okay, so of course, it's a great thing to have standards, and one of the most adopted standards in CNCF now is OpenTelemetry. So this refers to all areas of observability, which are basically what are referred to as the three pillars: metrics, logs, and tracing. And so now there is a standard, which has basically been taking the most popular formats and standardizing them so they can be used across all these opponents. So OpenTelemetry is widely accepted, across the industry. All the products are adopting this now. It started in 2019, and just about every product involved in this space conforms to that standard. So in the Kubernetes space, you may be, if you're familiar with Kubernetes, there's a construct or a resource called an operator. And as the name may suggest, it takes the work of operators, of administrators, and automates it. And so in the case of the, there are operators for all different products now. And Oracle has one for the database, has a few of them. One of them is for the database, and it will maintain the life cycle of your database for you. Okay, so this is part of any kind of CI/CD pipeline, is your provisioning stage of, particularly maybe different environments like dev, production, etc. So this helps with that. And you can automatically add it into your Kubernetes cluster using this dashboard. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is open source exporters. So exporters are basically, as the name suggests, exporting information from one system and then generally translating it into an OpenTelemetry format to be observed in visualization tools. So in the case of Oracle, we have these different exporters, again, from various products, but particularly the database. And so from the database, we can export metrics, logs, and tracing. And that's basically what that's showing here. And we're doing it, again, in OpenTelemetry format. So Prometheus for metrics, Jaeger or Zipkin, et cetera, for tracing. And so that can be brought into a Grafana console or any other visualizer. And what's nice about the Oracle exporters, and the overall theme of this talk is making observability powerful, simple, and I like to say also enjoyable. When you look at a nice console and you can see everything, a sky view of your entire system, which is difficult with a lot of these, architectures, like I'm saying now, multi-cloud, microservices, various API systems being called into. What's nice about having something like this is that you can get exactly the information you need. So for this database exporter, you can say, I want exactly these metrics. And the same thing for logs. I don't want all the logs. I want the logs for my online store or for whatever, particular, this department of my online store, whatever it may be. So these exporters are very customizable. Okay, and the same thing for logs. And so what we have is this observability controller that's built into the operator I mentioned that automatically sets all of this up for you for your database. Okay. Now we go on to client-side tracing and server-side tracing. So again, a lot of the theme of this, as I say in the title slide, is the end-to-end observability. And a lot of people say that end-to-end, but I mean it. So a lot of people, when they're talking about end-to-end, they may be, they're talking about the application side, or they're talking about the database side. And what I'm talking about, and again, I'm not just talking about Oracle here. In general, this is an issue or a consideration that must be addressed. Your application traces all the way from the phone or browser into the database, and including what the database is doing, and really including what the database is even doing with the file system and what's going on with the network. There are all these considerations. Just your microservice 1 called microservice 2 isn't enough to see the full picture. And so that's what we've been developing at Oracle, is this full end-to-end ability. So I'll talk a little bit about how we do that, because it's tricky, and we're essentially the only people that do that into the database. So there's the client-side tracing, okay? And this is how tracing works. Essentially, whatever your component is, it's, as I say, exporting its traces. So it spans, and a span can be anything. It can be a security operation, an application operation, a network operation. A trace has multiple spans, okay? So each component is exporting its span, its activity, and then they're being collected by a distributed tracing system so that you can view it in one continuous path, okay? And so there are a few options for instrumenting, and what OpenTelemetry standard does, not only standardizes it, its second biggest goal is to make it so that you can apply these without modifying code, okay? Because you may even have legacy systems or something like that where you can't manipulate the code. And just in general, it's nice to have your, it's a good design and development practice to keep as little extra cross-cutting concern logic out of your microservices. So you want to keep security out of them. You want to keep, things like tracing and observability out of them. You just want your business logic in there. So someone with that expertise can just write that microservice and not have to worry about the system. So there are a few ways to do that. Again, there's manual, the less desirable. And then there are agents and built instrumentation. Okay, and I'm going to show two examples. First, in the .NET, there is built-in instrumentation. So the short story is you have configuration. It will intercept different parts of your code and export it to that the tracing collector that I mentioned. Okay, and so that's what's available in .NET and in the Oracle .NET driver. Okay, and you have different options as far as the levels, etc. An example of the agent client tracing technique is in Java or JDBC, where OpenTelemetry uses Java agents, which have been around for ages, to attach to a Java process. And it's basically bytecode manipulation to find it and then send these traces out automatically. And so that's what we've done in JDBC with Oracle. Again, these are all standard open source based. And so we also provide an interface with extra information for your agent to use to send, additional information to your tracing collector. Okay. Now on to the server side. So what the client, in the case of Oracle, what's unique is it's not only collecting tracing information and sending it to the collector from the client side, it's propagating an ID to the server side. It's propagating the OpenTelemetry tracing ID, to be specific. And that's a big difference, because now you can not just correlate in different visualizers, but actually have a continuous trace and metrics that are collated in a visualizer. And so, as I say, that's a very big difference, because usually what's going on is you have at least 2 visualizers for your observability open, and you're tracing your application. And then on the right-hand side, you have a big node that says database, okay, and it stops there. So what you have your trace. I called insert into this database or whatever you did, but then you generally have to grab that ID, then go over to your database visualizer and do the correlation. And so what we've done is made it so you can visualize it all in one flow, okay? And we've done that by adding server-side tracing. And I won't go so deep into this. I know it's a lot of information, like I said in this presentation, but if you have any questions, you can ask afterwards, of course, too. But in the short story is, on the server side, we are exporting the database tracing, which has been around for decades. So I'm quite sure the OpenTelemetry standard is based on some of the Oracle tracing. I'm sure there was some influence there. So we're exporting in OpenTelemetry format these traces, and we're doing it with the trace that came in, that was propagated from the client side. So then we can do these sub-ops within the database to really give you the information on the database side and give a trace on the client and server side. So this is a very simple example of that. The first trace there is on the client. The second trace is in the database, and it's showing things in one trace and showing things that you wouldn't be able to do if you didn't have that capability, that information you see there. Okay. Real quick, this is kind of more bleeding edge, but on the Kubernetes side, one of the hottest topics right now is eBPF. And this, very quickly on this allows you to attach to your Linux kernel safely with a probe. And this technology has been around for a little bit, actually, but now it's really starting to be used, and it's starting to be used in places where a service mesh, if you're familiar with service mesh, is being used, because you don't need a sidecar like service mesh. It's very transparent. And what it does is you have a probe next to your Linux kernel, and then you have an application talking with that probe, and you can get all of the information that's coming in and out of it, and in a safe manner, as I say. So you can get observability information at this network kernel layer, and you don't have to rebuild the kernel or be intrusive at it. And so in the Oracle OKE, which is the Kubernetes offering from Oracle, we have this where you can automatically have this deployed as part of your container workload in Kubernetes. Okay, so very easy. And of course, it's integrated into visualization products. And so this visualization, or this monitoring, is not only passive, but you can also do things like routing. Things like service mesh. You can take this traffic and do the routing, and it's actually very nice for security, because you can shut things down right at the at the pipes. If something's going wrong in the system, you can instruct this to shut down the network. So it's very low level and transparent. Okay. And so very quickly, I know I only have a minute. I just make the point with these last 2 sections here that even though Oracle has very nice products to make this simpler. And those are OCI, APM, operations and management. Everything is supported in open source products. So there's no lock-in or anything like that. All of these products, support and consume all the functionality I've mentioned, so including Grafana. So here's an example of a Grafana console where you're going from the app into the database. And on the right-hand side, we see metrics. In the middle, we see logs. And on the left, we see tracing. And you can drill down back and forth between them. Okay, the logs have links to the tracing, etc. Okay, so, and again, I won't go too much into the Oracle aspects other than it has AI intelligence for the logs and all the observability built in. So you get a lot of niceness that you don't have to build yourself. Okay. And the only other thing I will mention is the database. If you're using Mongo, you're looking at me and saying, this is all Oracle database stuff. I don't care. We have a Mongo adapter if you happen to be using Mongo. So this all applies if you're using Mongo as well. Okay. And here are some resources. And I appreciate you listening to my ramblings. I know this is a lot of information, but I wanted to dump a lot onto you because, as I say, this is something that is very, as a developer advocate, every time I present on this, the room is full because it's a tough issue and a nice one if you solve it. So thanks so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. That was extremely insightful and really interesting capabilities, actually. So cool. Interested to see more.